The book of Genesis begins like this. In the beginning God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, Let there be light, and there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. And God said, Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. And God said, Let the waters under the heaven be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. And God said, Let there be light in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs, and for seasons, and for days and years. And let them be for light in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. And God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the fourth day. And God said, Let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that hath life, and fowl that may fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven. And God created great whales, and every living creature that moveth, which the waters brought forth abundantly, after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let fowl multiply in the earth. And the evening and the morning were the fifth day. And God said, Let the earth bring forth the living creature after his kind, cattle and creeping thing, and beasts of the earth after his kind. And it was so. And God made the beast of the earth after his kind, and cattle after their kind, and everything that creepeth upon the earth after his kind. And God saw that it was good. Genesis 1:1-25. Jai Prabhuji, hello everybody. We are continuing with our chapter that deals with the topic that we call how to transcend. And today we have a very straightforward question on which Prabhuji will give an answer. And the question is, what can I do to become enlightened? Straightforward. And Prabhuji answers this question. We promise that in this chapter we are going to have new angles, refreshing points of view on the same true, same essence from the same essence. And this is a very good example to this new and refreshing angle. So again, the question is, what can I do to become enlightened? And we may expect answers that are similar to the previous ones, where we learn from Prabhuji that we are not the doers, that there's nothing that we can do to allow meditation to happen. We can just relax and observe that we are currently the mind and the ego. There is nothing that we can do, etc. And yet Prabhuji gives us a totally different direction in today's article. Of course, he still speaks about the same reality, as we said, that realized beings always talk to us about the same essence. This is what we come to learn from them, about the reality as they see it. So the essence is similar, and yet these fresh new angles that we are talking about are always speaking to us the same truth from a totally different direction that is therefore always very alive and always very authentic and very engaging for us. And again, I think that this is a very, very good example, because what Prabhuji answers to this question, what can I do to become enlightened? It does not say it does not depend on you, you need to prepare yourself and not to expect, etc., as we said. But he tells us in this article, everything depends on you. This is the bottom line of this article. And what you need to not do, but do, quote unquote, and soon we will elaborate, is to want it. So on one hand, we learn from Prabhuji that there is nothing that we can do as egoic entities, as doers, because enlightenment or meditation or transcendence is not about doing. At the same time, Prabhuji tells us here, everything depends on us, everything depends on you. How, in what way, in what we want. In truly, sincerely, deeply desire it. So this is what we're receiving from Prabhuji in today's article. And in my eyes, what we are going to meet in this answer is two angles that I find in Prabhuji's vast path that he reveals in front of us. And we said that these classes we are receiving here three elements. On one hand, everything here, everything that we're dealing with is just Prabhuji's word. This is the foundation of this course, the foundation of the classes. We read Prabhuji's articles, we want to understand them, we attempt to associate with Prabhuji. So we can say everything is Prabhuji's words. At the same time, everything is my contemplation. Because we are going to, naturally, I'm going to speak about my understanding, my experience, my way to look at the things, my way to interpret Prabhuji's words. And at the same time, everything we can say is my contemplation. At the same time, everything ultimately, which is where the retroprogressive yoga always leads us, is your, whoever listens, process, experience, conclusions, understanding, etc. And I'm reminding it here again because what I'm sharing now is my own contemplation for sure about this point of view that Prabhuji reveals to us that is essential in his message in general. And what I see in it is combining the window of existentialism, Jean-Paul Sartre, soon we will explain what I mean by it, in Prabhuji's message, in Prabhuji's life. It's another window that Prabhuji was influenced by, associated with, contemplated on, and speak through it, his experience. Jean-Paul Sartre, existentialism. And the other window that I see here is just in a totally different direction, is the window of the devotee, of the relationship with the divine. We started to touch it in the previous class when we spoke about the Ishta Devata. So this was the first station in which we touched this important topic that is important in the retroprogressive yoga, and attempted to start to understand the meaning, the significance of this path of love of God, of the dualistic relationship with the divine. So I see both of them combined in today's article and in this indication of Prabhuji that speaks about the fact that if we want to wake up, we only need to want it. Really want it. Deeply want it. In other words, I think what it tells us, this saying of Prabhuji, is that if we are yet not enlightened, it means that we are still not wanting it. That we are still comfortable with our covering, with the lies, with our establishment in the egoic identification. And we're still not ready for waking up. Once we will want it, there will be no distance in time until there will be. It will be evident in our life. So again, the direction, the indication, the clarification that we are receiving from Prabhuji in this article, that finally waking up has everything to do with our most intimate will, most intimate desire. Now let's attempt to reconcile what we just through, which is the two opposite schools of thought, one of Jean-Paul Sartre, existentialism, the other one of the devotee of dualistic relationship of love and surrender to the divine. How are they related at all? How both of them are expressed in this article in my own eyes? So these are big and complicated topics. We will try to touch them and try to, as much as we can, reconcile this statement. These two approach, reconcile these two approach, and in this explain what I mean by the statement that I made. The devotee, we started to speak about it in the previous class again when we spoke about the Ishta Devata. So the Ishta Devata, Prabhuji explained to us about this aspect. It's an aspect of the divine with which we can develop a relationship, a preferred deity. And we said in the previous class that this, we can relate to it in the context of Hinduism. So we can have a relationship with one of the aspects of the divine within Hinduism, but we can also see the same principle in every form, every name, every path of the divine that we walk in any other religion, and also not necessarily in a religion. We might have a relationship with the divine in our own individual way, that we still have some relationship with this totality that Prabhuji spoke about. And what Prabhuji clarified to us about this relationship, that it is a relationship that is happening on the dualistic plane, because we are still living on the dualistic plane. But the favorable consciousness that we want to have in this relationship of worship of the divine, in order to facilitate integration in our life, harmony in our lives, is to remember all the time that this form of the divine that we interact with, that we have some dialogue with, is a reference to the totality. In this approach, Prabhuji tells us, we will cultivate integration and harmony and focus on our lives. However, if we relate to this form of the divine, or Ishta Devata, or our own particular God that we worship and follow, in a way that is of separation, which means that we see him as part, as an object, then we are likely to create separation, to increase the conflict and not to increase focus on our life, but the opposite. So as always, the retroprogressive yoga, we said, deals not with the actions that we do, with the words that we speak, but with the subjective transformation, with our subjective consciousness in whatever we do. So we can follow the same path and can be divided and more in conflict, more in separation, more in identification with the egoic entity. And we can follow the exact same path and enjoy of it for our transformation, for being more distant from our egoic identification, and cultivate more harmony, more love, more openness, more surrender in our life. It's us that determine, and this is exactly also related to the point that Prabhuji makes in this article, everything depends on us in a way. So this is about the path of love of God. That we said, this is one aspect that we see expressed in this indication that is made in this article. The other path, we're now going to a different extreme, a totally different school of thought of existentialism. Jean-Paul Sartre is one approach of existentialism. There are different approaches, and we just take him on purpose because he's the most secular. He represents for us a path that does not see the existence of God. And let's start to understand what we're talking about from reading Prabhuji's words about Jean-Paul Sartre in his book, The Symbolic Turn, when Prabhuji gives us the basic foundation of this philosophy that we are mentioning here and we would like to refer to in regard to this article. Jean-Paul Sartre, in his masterpiece, Existentialism is a Humanism, argues that the human being is what he does with what has been made of him. Within the framework of this work, Sartre argues that human beings lack a preconceived essential nature or predetermined purpose, thus being free to shape our own lives and imprint meaning on them. However, he also accepts that individual existence is shaped by a number of external factors such as culture, society, and education. At the crossroads of these two assertions, a conclusion emerges. The beginning, that origin which is half of everything, is not inherent to us. Okay, so what does Prabhuji tell us here regarding Jean-Paul Sartre and his existentialism? What Sartre claims, there is his famous saying, which existence precedes essence, which is reflected in the words that we just read of Prabhuji. That claims basically that there is no essence that is inherent in us, that we are just existence. This is opposing to other great thinkers who claim that there is some essence that we want to discover, to be. Sartre says no, we are only existing, and existence precedes essence. It comes before. And out of our existence, we can mold and create whatever essence we choose. We have complete and total freedom every single moment in our lives to choose, to be what we want to be, to do what we want to do. Sartre says, the important quote that Prabhuji often uses and includes here, the human being is what he does with what has been made of him. So while Sartre does emphasize the point that we are completely free and that there is no essence and that we can choose because we are only existence and there is complete freedom, there is no transcendence or some prevailing rules or prevailing path that we should follow and we should be. There's nothing that exists, no essence whatsoever, not of us and not of any divine entity. So we have complete freedom. While Sartre stresses this point, he of course also recognizes that all of us have a lot of circumstances in which we are situated. We have what was made of us, which we did not choose. We were born in a certain place, we went through a specific situation, we are in specific circumstances. Currently, we're not totally free in objective sense. However, in our subjective world, we are always free. We are always free to think. We are always free to feel. And we are always free to pave our life as we wish based on our own freedom. Sartre says that even in the most difficult circumstances that the human being can be, and he himself is an example of it because he was in a situation that he was under oppressing government, still what cannot be taken of us is our freedom. We still have freedom to do what is made of us. And this we can see related to the conclusion that we said we are going to find in Prabhuji's article. You only need to want it. Everything depends on us. For sure, Sartre in general would agree always that we are the initiators of what will happen. We are creating the essence according to our wishes. But how is it related to the devotee approach that we just mentioned? So let's talk more about the devotee approach again. And in this article, Prabhuji brings us the story of creation, which we'll touch in a minute. So for sure, the context is not secular. And this devotee approach that we are speaking about, as I said previously, in my eyes, does not contradict the approach on which Jean-Paul Sartre says. The conclusions definitely differ tremendously. They are totally opposite. If we examine these two schools of thought intellectually, objectively, we find a great contradiction that cannot be reconciled. If we examine them with dogmatic thinking, we will even find antagonism and rejection between the two. But if we examine it from the perspective of the subjective transformation of the seeker, I think that they reconcile, and that we can find this reconciliation in the point that Prabhuji is making in this article, which, as we said, the context is not secular. We can definitely connect it to the religious path of a devotee, and we can probably also connect it to other paths. But if we want light, if we want truth, we need to want it. On one hand, it's totally in line with the approach of existentialism. At the same time, it does not contradict the path of the devotee, but in my eyes, it reconciles harmoniously, beautifully, and it's expressed in it as well. And this is, I think, what Prabhuji reveals to us when he speaks about devotion and love of God. So let's explain further the path of the devotee. In this dualistic path that we are loving God, worshipping God, what in fact is happening is that we recognize that as egoic entities, our center in our life is in this entity. We are occupied with satisfying our own desires. We are acting in life out of the consciousness that we are the controllers. Once we walk on a path of devotion, of love of God, we try to shift the focus and the attention from this egoic entity that we are obsessed with to the preferred deity, to our God that we love. And to relate to this aspect of the divine as the controller, the ultimate controller, as the ultimate enjoyer. In this process, what happens to us if we are walking in it genuinely and not out of desire to increase our egoic identification and to increase the separation, but if we are in the attempt to allow this transformation in us, this subjective transformation, is that we become more servants and less the controller and less the enjoyer. If we are more servants, the relationship that we have with the divine is that we are occupied with doing our duty, with doing what is right, with taking responsibility, with being resourceful, not with relying on the divine. The fact that the divine is omnipotent does not mean that his reason for being is to satisfy my own whims and desires as an egoic entity. This would never be an approach of a devotee, but the opposite. The divine gave me so much good, so much beauty, so much help and grace, but I am an obstacle for my own happiness, and I am an obstacle for pure ultimate service of the divine. I need to take responsibility and to purify myself in order to be a better servant. In other words, my relationship with the divine is not on relying on him that he is going to reveal the light for me. I'm going to sit and wait because the divine is omnipotent until enlightenment will fall on my hand. No, I need to recognize that currently I am out of my own egoistic desires remaining in the darkness, and I don't open my eyes because I don't want it enough, because I don't love enough, because I'm not pure enough. So everything depends on me. And here I think that we meet the connection that we spoke about regarding with the existentialism. When Prabhuji talked with us about the dualistic relationship with the Ishtadevata, he clarified that currently we are on the dualistic plane, and this is why we need or we benefit of such a relationship. We are in a world of names, of forms, of thoughts, of actions. We see ourselves as a form of an entity. And therefore, it is favorable for us to walk on this path in order to transcend our vision, in order to understand the language that we communicate with ourselves and with the divine. Because the dualistic language, we understand the transcendence. It has nothing to do with us, because we are entities that speak a language and that understand sounds and visions and everything to do with the world of the senses, of the perceptions. This is why it is favorable for us. However, what Prabhuji clarifies when he says that we want to see the Ishtadevata as the totality is that the consciousness that we understand and in which we walk and work in this dualistic path of love and devotion is the understanding that our Ishtadevata is the totality. It even includes us. It includes everything we can think about. It includes all other human beings and all perceptions and everything that can be existing in our mind. It's beyond our perception, necessarily, therefore. And the Prabhuji tells us the true approach, the favorable approach in this relationship, takes us into, finally, pure subjectivity. So the transformation that it allows, it's not the separation, the conflicts, it will not increase our desire to control and harm others or be better than others. If we are walking on a genuine path, it will allow more harmony, we said, more unity, less egoism, less conflicts. And ultimately, it comes from the recognition that everything is pure subjectivity. Our Ishtadevata, if Prabhuji tells us, is the totality. It's all that exists. So ultimately, in the reality, we also understand that the reality is one, is not dual. And I think that in this pure subjectivity, it's a chain that we can meet Sartre and existentialism. Only existence is, only pure subjectivity is. They can meet one another. And again, I think that the conclusion of it is that finally everything depends on us. It's what Prabhuji shares with us in this article and expresses in the words that we are going to review now. Now, Prabhuji starts this article. We started in the same way that Prabhuji starts the article with the story of creation. Very interesting. We meet the question, what can I do to become enlightened? And Prabhuji starts to speak to us about the story of creation. So, except for probably facilitating contemplation, because we come in touch with scriptures that immediately take us into more suitable atmosphere for retroprogressive contemplation, very good chances that we had no understanding and no idea how this is related to the question. Why are we getting here the story of creation? And Prabhuji, as always, is not rushing to answer our questions, but he helps us to go through this transformation if we are going with Prabhuji in this journey. Prabhuji is patient, and he brings, in my opinion, if we go in these journeys with Prabhuji that we meet in every article, in every lecture, with patience, with listening, we will always come on the other side with clarity about our questions. But we need to slow down and listen. So if we're with Prabhuji going hand in hand from this story of creation, let's continue with the steps that Prabhuji walks us through and see how we will get into more clarity regarding our question. What can I do to become enlightened? So let's read Prabhuji. The light of the first day is different from the light emitted by the luminaries created on the fourth day. If we pay attention to the text, we will see that God does not create or produce light, but only says, "Let there be light." And there was light. During the process of creation, on the other hand, God performs different actions. He divided the light from the darkness. He divided the waters from the waters. He created great whales and every living creature, and so on. However, God did not perform any action related to the first light. Rather, it appeared after a divine expression that reflected his desire. Okay, so what Prabhuji tells us here, all this description, what it reveals to us, is the difference between many actions that God does in the description of the creation, different actions that Prabhuji elaborated in this paragraph, or at least include a few out of this list. However, the light was not created by God. He only wanted it. And thanks to God's desire, there was light. He simply wanted. So this is the opening that Prabhuji tells us regarding this story of creation. This is what we see, that this light was simply revealed by the desire of God. Let's continue. According to Rabbi Saadia ben Joseph Gaon, verse 3 refers to the light of divine glory, and the fact that God said indicates that God wanted. When God desires light, he does not need to make it, but just to mention it. Okay, so here we see Prabhuji brings a quote of Rabbi Saadia ben Joseph Gaon, that is a saint and interpreter about the Torah, among other texts. And here what Rabbi Saadia Gaon tells us is that this light that is spoken about in the third verse, when it is said, "Let there be light," is the light of divine glory. Soon we are going to read his words from the original text of Rabbi Saadia Gaon when he speaks about this verse. And what Prabhuji tells us here about Rabbi Saadia Gaon, that he says that when God wants something, all he needs is to say. So by saying, we understand that he wanted. Now let's visit the words, the original words of Rabbi Saadia Gaon, speaking about this light of the divine glory. Rabbi Saadia Gaon explains to us that the first 3 days were that this specific light of divine glory that was mentioned in the third verse, is the light that prevails in the first 3 days of the creation. The fourth day, we have the mention of a different type of light. And so let's read again the original words of Rabbi Saadia Gaon and attempt to translate them. So I'm going to read it in Hebrew first, and then attempt to translate it into English to the best of my ability. ויאמר אלוהים יהי אור, זה האור שנברא, היה גדול הערך, ומקומו היה בגלגל חמה, ואותו האור נודע בהליכתו ג' ימים הראשונים שבמעשה בראשית שכתוב בהן, ויהי ערב, ויהי בוקר, יום אחד, ויום ב' ויום ג'. רוצה לומר שנודע בו מידת יום ומידת לילה. ומה שאמרו זכרונם לברכה, חגיגה י"ב, שהאור שנברא ביום א' גנזו הקדוש ברוך הוא לצדיקים לעתיד לבוא, כוונתם שהקדוש ברוך הוא יברא להם, לעתיד לבוא, אור כיוצא בו, אבל זה האור בעצמו נתחלק לכוכבים גופים חלוקים, וזה האור שעתיד להיות שיעורו יהיה כאותו האור שנברא ביום א', שהיה גדול ביותר בהיר, ולא היה כוח בנבראים להשתמש בו ולא לראותו. הלא תראה אותו החלק הנשאר ממנו, בכוכב חמה אין כוח בעין להסתכל בו. קל וחומר אותו האור שעדיין לא נתחלק, אלא מקובץ במקום אחד, ולעתיד לבוא יהיה כוח בצדיקים לראותו ולהשתמש בו. הוא שכתוב, אור זרוע לצדיק ולישרי לב שמחה, תהילים צדי ו', אור צדיקים משמח, משלי י' ג', לאור באור החיים, איוב למד ג'. Okay, so we got a pretty long Hebrew text. And now, let's attempt to translate. So, Rabbi Saadia Gaon speaks about this verse where God said, "Let there be light." And he explains, this is the light that was created, was of great value. And his place was in the round of the sun. And this light was known in his existence 3 first days in the creation story. As it was written, and there was evening and there was morning, first day and then second day and then third day. So it tells us this light that was mentioned in the first verse again existed for 3 days. We see here 3 days. There was evening and there was morning, first day and then second day and then third day. What it wants to say, tells us Rabbi Saadia Gaon, that in this light existed the night and the day. And what said Chazal, or our saints, our Jewish saints and sages in the Mishnah, Chagiga Yud Bet, it's in the Mishnah, that this light was created in the first day, the Kadosh Baruch Hu, God, kept it for the saints that are going to come, and that the meaning is that the Kadosh Baruch Hu, or God, will create for them to come similar light. Okay, similar light will be created by God to the tzaddikim, to the saints, to the sages that will come. So in the story of creation, Rabbi Saadia Gaon tells us that the Kadosh Baruch Hu, the divine, kept this light for the saints that will come, and they will have access to the same light that was in the first 3 days, that was of great value. Different light than what we see. Let's continue with his words. So the meaning is that the Kadosh Baruch Hu will create for them that will come in the future a similar light as this light itself. But this light was divided to stars, to bodies that are separated. And this is the light that will come. His measure is of the same light of the first day again. So this light of the first day was further, we see in the fourth day, divided into different stars, into different bodies, okay? But the light that was given by the Kadosh Baruch Hu to the tzaddikim is the same light before it was divided into bodies, into different elements in this world, into different stars. Then he tells us Rabbi Saadia Gaon beautifully. So this light that was created, his measure is in the same of the first light that was created in the first day, that was great and bright, and there was no ability for the living creatures to use it or to see it. We do not have access to this light as human beings. It's not in our power to see this light, to use this light. But he tells us God kept it for the tzaddikim, for the saints and for the sages, the same original light before it was divided again to stars and to different bodies. And then he explains further. He justifies and he says that even we cannot see the light after this light was divided from the sun, the star of the sun. The eye cannot look at it because it's so powerful for us. What to speak about the same light that is still even wasn't divided, but it's located in one place, and in the future only, the saints and the sages will be able to see it and to use it as we see written, as it is written. And then we get a few quotes from the Bible. Rabbi Saadia Gaon brings a few quotes that talks to us about this light of the tzaddikim that is kept from the tzaddikim, that shows that it is evident that saints and sages have access to the same light that is presented to us in the first day. Okay, this is the beautiful quote from the original words of Rabbi Saadia Gaon, on which Prabhuji bases the explanation that when God says, it means that he wanted something. So what we conclude, going back to Prabhuji's article, what we conclude from this specific presentation is that this specific light was not created by the divine, was not created by the Kadosh Baruch Hu, Prabhuji tells us, but it was simply desired, and it manifested upon the desire of the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Let's continue with Prabhuji's words. In verse 2 it is said, "And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep." The darkness is only upon the face, on the outside. The light lies in the depths of the interior. It is not necessary to create it, but only to aspire to it, and it will become manifested. So here we see Prabhuji connected to us the point that we mentioned, that we will see in this article, that we only need to want the light, to the description of the creation, when we see that God only wanted the light. And Prabhuji now in this specific paragraph does not speak about the creation, if we see. He speaks in present tense. He tells us, the light lies in the depths of the interior, right now. He doesn't say it lied before it was revealed, before God said. He doesn't speak to us in past tense, but he tells to us the darkness is always, currently, right now, again Prabhuji speaks in present tense, is in the surface, on the surface. Our difficulty, our confusion, our separation, our misery, all this darkness is only upon the face of the earth. It's not what is true in our interior. And I think we take from this words of Prabhuji again, that this is true in every single moment. The light exists, and we have access to it because it exists in the interior. The darkness that we face, that we see, that we experience, that we need to deal with, is only upon, again, the surface. Let's read again the words on Prabhuji. In verse 2 it is said, "And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep." Until now, Prabhuji talks to us about the creation. Now he goes to this moment, and he speaks to us now and here, in relation to the person that asked this question, in relation to each and every one of us. And Prabhuji says, "The darkness is only upon the face, on the outside. The light lies in the depths of the interior. It is not necessary to create it, but only to aspire to it, and it will become manifested." Prabhuji does not say God did not need to create it. God only needed to want it. He says this light, no one needs to create it. It only needs to be desired in order to be revealed. And then here, by this, Prabhuji speaks again about us. This light exists in the interior. A general statement regarding every situation, every point of view that we can look at the reality. Prabhuji makes a statement. The light exists in the interior. The darkness exists upon the surface, on the outside. This is always true. We're getting from Prabhuji again a statement which helps us to get into the conclusion of this article. If we want light, we need to want similarly to the Kadosh Baruch Hu, because the light exists. It's not the real reality that it does not exist. The real reality is of the light, not of the darkness that we experience. This is what Prabhuji tells us here. God creates. However, he did not make the light of the first day. He only mentioned it. If the light were a divine creation, it would be impossible for us to create it, because human beings can only destroy, compose, and arrange, but not create. So here Prabhuji reveals a beautiful point that justifies or clarifies or stresses further the point that we have access to the light without creating, without doing anything. If it was regarding creation, we would not be able to create light, because human beings cannot create something from nothing as God can. We can only recycle. We can only play with the same elements. We can only change the shape maybe, and again mix different elements, but we cannot create something from nothing. This is only in the power of the divine. But because this light does not need to be created, we have hope and we have a path to pave ourselves toward this light, toward having access with this light, into this light. In verse 3, the Bible bestows on us the power to aspire to clarity. It tells us that when we long for light, it will manifest from the depths of darkness. Although we lack the ability to create from nothing, we can desire light and illuminate the darkness. So here, I think the words that we just read are in fact the bottom line of this article, that we will of course get again in the end, as always, from Prabhuji. But if we want light, Prabhuji tells us, we need to want it, really. If we wanted really, we would be in light. So we don't get something that we can do or create or manipulate, but we do get the attention on our subjective words and on the fact that everything depends on us in our spiritual journey, we can say retroprogressive process, etc. Religious path maybe. This access to the light, to clarity, to being in reality only depends on our strong desire, on our one-pointedness, on our focus in our life. And we can probably also take it to the understanding that if we want to make more room for this desire for light in our life, we need to cultivate it. We need to focus on it. We need to remove all the other wants and desires that currently are still too significant for us, to allow it to be more evident in our life and to grow and to manifest, and hopefully one day also to bring to us light. And now Prabhuji will quote two statements or indications from the Shulchan Aruch. So we will say a few words about what is this book, the Shulchan Aruch, a Jewish scripture, before we read and continue with the context of the article. So this is a book that is a compilation of what we can say the Jewish code of halakha, what to do, basically, according to the Jewish law, that compiles a lot of opinions and decisions and resolutions of different saints and stages along the Jewish history, and also includes a determination or a ruling of how to actually act. This book was compiled by Rabbi Yosef Karo in the 16th century. It was written in Tzfad or Tzfat, and it was published in Venice. And it is in fact a summary of another great work that Rabbi Yosef Karo did and dedicated many, many years of his life to create, which is called Beit Yosef. In this book, Rabbi Yosef Karo elaborated a lot more. So the Shulchan Aruch was in fact, or the set table was in fact a summary of the work that is called Beit Yosef. And the work that is called Beit Yosef was based on a previous Jewish book of halakha that was written 200 years earlier by Rabbi Yaakov ben Asher, that is also known as Baal HaTur, or the master of the column, or the possessor of the column, because he compiled this book of 4 columns. It's called 4 columns, that Arba'a Turim in Hebrew, where he consolidates a lot of, again, Jewish halakha, Jewish determinations regarding various topics and various questions of how to conduct under the Jewish religion. So again, we have the work of Rabbi Yaakov ben Asher that was made in the 14th century, was put together in the 14th century, based on which Rabbi Yosef Karo compiled a great work that is called Beit Yosef, years later, based on which was created the Shulchan Aruch, and published in the 16th century, which is a summary of the work that is called Beit Yosef. All these books were attempts to consolidate the Jewish law. It wasn't an easy work to do, very, very, very complex and sophisticated in many levels. Of course, also in the level of taking decisions out of the various approaches of different saints and sages, Jewish saints and sages, and to come to some conclusions. But this is what Rabbi Yosef Karo did. He presented conclusions in the work that is called Shulchan Aruch, a set table, that he made as a summary to his work Beit Yosef in order to make it more appealing to the people and more digestible. Today we have in fact a summary of the Shulchan Aruch, so a summary of this summary that is a short book, or at least one book, that compiles only the bottom lines, we can say, of what to do, that many Jewish practitioners and religious people follow and adapt, which they have what to do and what not to do. But in fact, this conclusion is a result of a long history and very elaborated and sophisticated, of many opinions, of a lot of thought, of a lot of contemplation, of a lot of division and discussions, and not always agreement. And what we get is some kind of a conclusion that people follow in order to connect themselves into the Jewish religion, but not necessarily these conclusions were the opinions of all the saints and sages along the years of the Jewish history. This is the Shulchan Aruch, but just to give us kind of some background about the text that Prabhuji brings here. But the understanding that we have, that we want to take with us, is that this book is in fact the book of the Halacha, or the Jewish law, that instruct us what to do regarding various topics, how to be a Jewish person, how to conduct our religion, how to cultivate our relationship with the divine, with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, how to serve him, how to follow him, how to do his will in a way. And now Prabhuji will speak about two important indications that we find in the beginning of this book of the Shulchan Aruch, and they will connect us to the article that we are dealing with and to the indications that we already received from Prabhuji, or to the suggestions and direction that we already received from Prabhuji, which is to want the light, which is to assume in a way responsibility on bringing light to our lives, and not on solely relying on the divine, on God, on the Kadosh Baruch Hu for our awakening. So let's read further, Prabhuji. At the beginning of his book, the Shulchan Aruch, Rabbi Yosef Karo says, התגבר כארי לעמוד בבוקר לעבודת בוראו, שיהיה הוא מעורר השחר. שולחן ערוך, אורח חיים, סעיף א'. They should strengthen themselves like lions to get up in the morning for the sake of serving the Creator, so that they wake the dawn. Shulchan Aruch, Orach Chaim, verse 1. The Shulchan Aruch begins like the Torah, rising in the morning to continue the very work of the Creator, which means to illuminate the morning. That is, human beings can awaken the dawn, and if they want light, there will be light. Later on, Rabbi Joseph Karo offers instructions on how to perform his divine work, by keeping God in front of oneself always. שיוויתי השם לנגדי תמיד, תהילים ט"ז ח'. I have set the Lord before me constantly. Psalms 16:8. So we see two important indications in the beginning of this holy book, the Shulchan Aruch, that gives us instruction of how to love God, how to conduct in our relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. First, we see the indication that we need to wake up the dawn, not to wait for the divine to wake us up. We need to wake ourselves up, and we ourselves wake the dawn up even. And then Prabhuji explains that Rabbi Joseph Karo, gives us further clarification on how to do that. And now we are going back to our presentation of the path of the devotee. By seeing God in front of our eyes constantly, by loving this totality, by desiring to worship this totality, by desiring to serve this totality and not to be served by it, and continue to sleep on our bed. But we need to wake up in order to do for our Lord, for our God. And by seeing this totality in front of our eyes constantly, we will have the strength to wake up the dawn, to wake up in the morning, to bring light to our life, which is of course the connection to the main point that Prabhuji tells us in this article. We can bring light to our lives by ourselves. We don't need to wait for the divine to do it for us. But we have this power that we see expressed beautifully in this very traditional book of the Jewish law. The same principle. Don't wait for the divine. We can be the most religious people, either in the Jewish religion or any other religion. But we don't want to rely on the divine to do the work for us. If you really aspire to clarity, you have only to desire it. You just need to follow your soul's thirst for the light. And we will finish this class with a short part from a lecture that was given by Prabhuji, that he speaks about the same principle of the fact that we are waiting for something to happen to us, while in fact everything depends on us. And in this we will finish. Thank you for joining. Jai Prabhuji.
The desire for enlightenment, the desire for consciousness. Don't put consciousness as another object there outside. You understand what I mean? Don't put enlightenment, God, Krishna, as another object in this world of objects, objective world. But try to look at it from a different point of view. Like all these so-called objects or experiences take place in consciousness. You understand what I mean? So consciousness cannot be a goal. It's only a question of resting in the light. Many times we talk in the scriptures about the light. Tattvadarshinaha, the one who sees the light. Remember? Tadvide pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upavekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. Search, look for one who has seen the light. The light. Because whatever you can experience, everything you can perceive because there is light in this room. If you put everything in darkness, you cannot perceive nothing. But at the moment there is light, you can see. You can see a phone, you can see a television, you can see tables, you can see chairs, you can see people. At the moment in darkness, you cannot see. And you see people, objects. But the real wise and enlightened one is the one who is enlightened because he saw the light. Whatever you can perceive in this world of names and forms is because of consciousness. The wise is the one, Tattvadarshinaha, who directs his attention to the light of consciousness, to the light of consciousness that allow everything to take place. All this universe of experiences take place. This world is not what you think. That is what I mean to see what is as it is, and not as you think it is. You think that you need some object in order to be happy, some situation. you don't understand. This is crazy, no? You don't understand that happiness or joy is the nature of consciousness. So the way to be happy is not to bring some object or some situation or some place. The way to be happy is very simple, is to ignore the mind with all the thoughts. There is some presence that is aware that you are present here. There is some presence that is aware that you look at me. Stay in that presence. Be that presence. Stop thinking about. And there, slowly, in the heart, slowly, you will pay attention that joy come, happiness come. You live in such a way, you live in such a way that such is, all the time such is the, you live in such a way, pay attention, you live in such a way that you look at the morning in the mirror and you wait to see a smile in the mirror in order to be happy and smile. That will never happen. You need to smile and then you will see a smile in the mirror. You look? No smile. How I can buy a mirror that I can see a smile? Only when you discover your smile that is consciousness, you will see a smile in the mirror.